I applied at a bunch of like labor companies that do event staffing, and they have audio and video, like people that go to like stadiums and do the local crew stuff. I did one like 3 days grace loadout where I didn't know anything about events, and they were like, hey, you want to be a loader? I was like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, okay, get in the back of the truck. And I was with these two giant guys and basically like wrecked my back because I was 20 and weak. So I didn't do that again for a long time. Yeah. But the same company called me 4 years later. They're like, hey, I'm the new staffing person at this company. There's nothing really in your profile about what you do. What do you do? And I was like, oh, well, I'm an audio engineer. Like, she's like, oh, like, can you do front of house? I was like, yeah, totally. What do you like? I'd never really done any actual front of house gigs for like live sound. Like I know how to do it obviously, but it wasn't in my resume. She's like, oh, okay, well actually there's an opening for this place. It's like, about a 45-minute drive out of where you are. But if you're willing to commute, like there's an opening for front of house. So I could get you in there to train like next week. And I was like, okay, crazy. So I started doing front of house gigs on my days off from the studio for this events company. And then as I did higher ranking studio stuff, like more engineering, but less work because people brought their engineers. So there wasn't as much like, days of work. I would sort of start doing more live event stuff to compensate for the less studio work. And so I did that for 4 years as well in the tail end of the studio gig. And then moved to Toronto.
Just like well-rounded education, I guess, for mixing.
Yeah, I've done a lot. And then moved to Toronto 8 years ago. Quit the studio. It was like me and my wife, we were just about to get married. Like we both kind of hit a roadblock in our careers where it just wasn't going how we wanted. I was like looking into other avenues still because there wasn't that much happening in Vancouver for me. Even with the big studio, like I was having trouble just making enough money to make it make sense. And moved to Toronto, did a few events, gigs. There was a day where I was moving trusses. Literally the job was we were in a warehouse and they needed to... Someone forgot to inventory the trusses that came back from a huge event. And so they needed to scan the barcodes on the trusses, but they'd stack them so the barcodes were on the bottoms. So me and this guy had to unstack and restack piles of 40-foot trusses just so that someone could get to the barcode and scan it all day. And that guy dropped one of the trusses on my foot. Luckily, I had steel toes on, but it was like, I was like, I could have just broken my leg. Like it was not good. And I came home from work that day. I was like, I'm quitting events. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to make this studio thing work. And I started just calling myself after that. I was like, you know what? I love mixing. It's the thing people say I'm the best at. It's my favorite part. I'm just going to start calling myself a mixer. I'm going to start just meeting as many people as I can. Like I just looked on, events websites in Toronto and there's like indie band nights at a couple of places, like went to a coffee shop every day and just like cold called people, like looked in studio credits and Bandcamp releases from Toronto artists, made a huge list of studios, reached out to all the owners, tried to leverage my like being from the warehouse as sort of an in just because then it's, I'm credible kind of right away because someone like I worked on a bunch of big stuff and just started meeting people. And then within a few months, other audio professionals were actually recommending me for gigs, which was something that hadn't happened in Vancouver, but Toronto actually has, there's a lot more work here.
Yeah, it's the center of the Canadian music scene, right?
Exactly.
Like,
so it was.
I've gathered.
Yeah, totally. It's the biggest city here, and so it was interesting. All of a sudden, I hit this point where I was making friends with other owners and studio owners and stuff, and they were actually recommending for gigs they were too busy to do, and so the work started picking up. And then within I think 6 months from that, I was doing enough to, like at least pay the bills from studio work.
That's amazing.
And then that was like
it sounds like a skyrocket from being like all over the place. Yeah, I mean, not to dismiss it or anything, but because you got like a really well-rounded education, but you're like, okay, I'm in a big studio, I'm running sessions, blah blah blah. I'm at events, I'm lifting random,
just doing like loadouts at 2 a.m. for stadium gigs and stuff.
And then you're like, okay, I'm a mixer now. And then 6 months is really fast. That's really fast.
I wasn't making a lot of money. It's like barely enough to pay the bills, but we'll pay the bills in a relationship. So there are two of us. So it's obviously a little bit easier.
Right. Sure.
But and then I also at the time,
I know that. Yeah.
One of the best people I met in Toronto that helped me out was a guy named Steve, who at the time was the sort of like main engineer for Sirius XM Canada for all their like live in studio stuff. Cause they actually do a lot of content. They promote, like they do when bands tour through, they get them to come in and do like 3 to 5 songs live at the Florida studio and it gets mixed and stuff. It's like, there's a lot of work doing that. And they also record events and then you mix the shows for broadcast. So he started getting me to sub in with him at his studio for recording these live off the floor things, which was cool. So I was mixing, doing a lot of that. I was still tracking a little bit of production, a couple there's maybe 4 or 5 albums I produced in the first couple of years I was here total. I'd done a bit of there's also, I also did some post-production and work for advertising, mixing like commercials and doing sound design for a couple of people in Vancouver. And so I was like, you know what? Music's hard. Maybe I should do ads. I don't know. Looks kind of shitty, but maybe really cool. Like I wasn't super into it. And advertising people generally, it's just like not my vibe. But I got recommended for this opening for a like chief engineer at a audio post-production place here. And like 2 people both emailed me about it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should, ask him. So I emailed the guy. He's like, oh yeah, let's have a meeting. Like I heard great things about you. And so I went in and like hung out at his studio, and I went in not even knowing if I wanted the job, which was kind of a good, I think, place to be, because it wasn't so much an interview as a meeting, right? Just like, is this a good fit? What do you think? And so at the end, he's like, so
get it, don't care that much. You know?
And he was like, so do you want to, they offered me a salary. I'd never had like a salaried job before in my life. They were like, yeah, we'll pay you a salary. It was like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll try it. So I did that for 7 months full time, and then also mixing at night after hours. It didn't work out in the end, which was for the best, because after that I just pushed mixing more and just do that. I've been doing just full-time mixing like 5 days a week at least for 4 years. 5 years.
Yeah, I'm curious because I found you through your few but very good YouTube videos. That's your YouTube channel is like super interesting because it's like you've got like, I don't know, 10 videos, but they have like tens of thousands of views and they're all really good.
Oh, thanks.
So I mean, that's how I first found out about you. Did that contribute? Did that help you? What was the impetus for that? And, what was the effect of it as well?
Yeah. So that was actually part of when I was sort of going through that transitional phase of like, all right, I can't do these events things anymore. I got to like really figure out just how to do, I just want to be mixing all the time, That's what I want to do. And so I started looking at my career more as a business and like listening to a lot of like business podcasts and like looking up, all the like getting into the entrepreneur kind of side of things of like, how do I make this actually happen? So I was like, okay, well, marketing, right? Like in music, you can't really like, you can advertise, but you're not going to get the gigs you want to get from like doing a YouTube ad or like a Instagram sponsored thing, right? Like it's just not, it's word of mouth and relationships is where, at least in my experience, music gigs that are any good come from. But I was like, I need to make myself visible was the biggest thing. And so I was like, well, my wife actually convinced me to do the YouTube stuff. So I tried one video. There was this indie rock breakdown thing of one of my favorite projects I'd done a long time ago. There used to be a band called they're called Bad Pop now anyway. Cool indie rock band. I did some breakdowns for that, and I got really, really positive. I was like so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I'm not like an in front of the camera kind of person. I'd avoided being the center of attention my whole life. I just was convinced by a few people like, just try it. And so I did a couple, and I got incredibly positive responses and like I got DMs from producers that were people in my mind I was like embarrassed about doing these because of, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that guy's going to think I'm some like YouTube guy just doing, whatever.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, we have a podcast. You totally do like a forward. It's like there's always that negative self-talk thing where you're like, does this make like?
Yeah, people are going to think I'm a sellout. Or
there's all these stigmas, attached to it in our industry, especially. I think just hold over some like old school kind of mentality things. But anyway, so yeah, the YouTube was one avenue, and I did a couple of videos and just got like, really like incredibly positive responses. Like I have people emailing me being like, oh my God, this is the clearest, most interesting video of this I've watched. Like, please do more content. I had people I knew from the community in Toronto messaging me directly being like, hey, I'm not going to like comment on it online, but I really like this video. I stole some of the vocal effects things you did. It was cool, so that was super validating. And also at the same time, I'd been going to these meetup groups here where like once a month, there's like 8 to 15 people would meet up and they'd have a speaker that worked in the music industry and just do a talk on something. And this one woman did one on social media, and just like she works, does that full time. Like she's like a social media consultant or whatever. Like this was a while, like 7 years ago or something. And so I also started trying to grow my Instagram. And at the time, a strategy that actually worked still, which doesn't anymore, is like the following people who already like the thing you do. So basically what I did I'll explain it specifically. So for probably a couple months, every day I would have an alarm set hourly or every hour and a half. I forget what the algorithm lets you do, but basically every hour and a half, I would go to like, I don't know, Waves, Instagram, or like Focusrite, or like some audio company, click on their newest post, the list of people that had liked that post, and then follow all those people until the limit hits. And then if you do that, because those people like audio already, the follow back rate is way higher.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I did that every hour. Like I just had a timer. I'd be mixing, stop every hour, hour and a half, follow, just do it manually. I did that like religiously for like a few months, and I got my Instagram up to like 12,000 followers or something doing that.
That's insane.
I kind of yeah, exactly. I mean, I was following like 6,000, so like the ratio is not great, but yeah, and I'm still like, I unfollowed a lot of people that I didn't want to follow in the last few years finally. And so I think I'm like below 10 now, but I wasn't using like the 10K, you know, you get like the thing where you can add links to your stories and stuff. I wasn't really using it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that, and then I did YouTube and started trying to figure out like, what do people want on YouTube? It seems like a lot of people comment on like my vocal treatments, especially back then when I was working on projects where I had more liberties with like adding effects and things. Now I do a lot more pop stuff with producers who are like already, they send me a thing and it's like kind of what they want already. It's more just polishing.
Yeah, I understand.
But back then I was doing a lot more like creative stuff and people like that. So I did videos on that and like SEO research and like really kind of dug down into the marketing side of it.
Wow, smart.
Yeah, so those both contributed to like, this is why we met. It's why I met so many people. There's a couple actually really great clients that have become like lifelong friends I met through the YouTube channel somehow. And the combined, like, you know, if someone finds you on one medium and then they search you on the internet and then they find like this other thing and like it validates, you know, it's like if you see someone 3 places, you're like, oh, this must be like a legit person.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and they go, and there's like a website and it has some information, and like I always make my playlist very visible. Like I want, even if it's not big name stuff, I want you to go to my website and the first thing you can do is like hear what I do. Because that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I find a lot of people don't do that. And it's just like, your credits are great, but if you can't actually play me some work and tell me what you did specifically on it, and not just have, like, I don't have credits on my website that are like, I worked on AC/DC. I'm like, I got them sandwiches. Like, I didn't mix a record, you know? So I'm not going to put that on my reel.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely the right approach. Yeah, I'm curious what you think is, you know, because, you know, the YouTube thing was a few years ago and Instagram was a couple years ago. Like, what do you think is the place to do it now? Is the idea to kind of get the word out on as many platforms as possible, or like double down on one platform? Like, where do you think things are happening these days?
So I'm not in the space that much, and I'm assuming it's still really popular, but like TikTok is, I guess, the latest thing, right? I was really unsure of how that could be leveraged for like audio, because, you know, it's all just like teenagers dancing, and
it's really hard. I think, yeah, like humor works really well on TikTok, but what we're doing is much nerdier, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
You know,
but that's actually this year, if I do more content, that's something I might experiment with, sort of like really short versions of like mixing breakdowns, or like if I have a cool vocal effect, maybe just do a really quick video where it's like step 1, 2, 3, 4, like, you know, just like pull up Echo Boy, filter the thing, do the whatever, throw the word into it. Like, Smart. I don't know, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I've heard from a lot of other people who are doing influencer type things, or like entrepreneurs that use digital marketing, that TikTok, especially like in sort of unless your demographic is like really young people, which for me it's not, because 15-year-olds don't have any money to get their songs mixed at a professional level unless the label's paying for it. In that case, they're not hiring you from TikTok.
Yeah.
But apparently the big thing with TikTok seems to be the conversion to other platforms. So if people find you on TikTok, they look you up on your Instagram, and then the Instagram converts, or YouTube. Whereas directly from TikTok isn't always a thing, but it can like funnel people into your other more developed social media platforms.
Yeah. I just find it so exhausting. It's like, how many platforms do I have to give a fuck about? Excuse my French.
Exactly. It depends on, I don't know where I'm at with that stuff. Like I've been not doing it really at all. Last year I tried to do more Instagram posts where I started doing a thing where I just put like a screenshot or video of the song and the clip on my, you know, Instagram main page or whatever, just to like show that I'm working, and you can hear stuff again. It's like you can see what I'm working on, you can hear it really quickly. Yeah,
and it just keeps you top of mind, I guess.
Yeah, that's sort of the main
your followers.
Thing. Exactly. But yeah, I haven't done videos in a while. I might do them more this year because I'm actually transitioning into a home studio again. I've been working out of a commercial room downtown that's run by a mastering engineer here that's pretty well known, and so That's been great.
Yeah.
I'm just
It's
around.
what was it? Caballo?
Joao Carvalho mastering, JCM mastering.
Joe Carvalho, yeah.